Democrats are griping tonight about this major tax cut, which can only mean one thing, which is that President Trump is on the verge of his first major legislative victory in office. Some studies suggesting that over 80% of taxpayers will see a tax reduction because of this plan. As you know, the stock market has already been on fire. Economic growth has been on the rise. The president, Republican leaders hoping that this tax cut, once signed into law, will jumpstart the economy even more, and Republicans are poised to take credit in next year's midterm elections because not a single Democrat in the House or Senate has indicated they're going to vote for it. But in fairness, Republicans will own this if it fails to actually come out and do have the desired effect. Democrats noting that public polls have suggested this tax package is deeply unpopular, in part because some people in states like New York, New Jersey, California will see their taxes go up, and also big picture, a $1.5 trillion tax cut may increase the national debt big time. But make no mistake, this is a desperately needed win for Republican leaders and the president, who had seen the failure to repeal and replace Obamacare. Remember, though this tax package includes ending the individual mandate. So that actually does rip out one key pillar of Obamacare. Here's what the rest of the package does. It cuts the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, a big cut. There will still be 7 individual brackets, but many are going down lower, a range of 10 to 37%. The child tax credit will double. The standard deduction will double to $12,000 for individuals, $24,000 for married couples, and you can deduct up to $10,000 of property or state and local taxes. Meanwhile, the Senate about to vote tonight on this, about 11:30 p.m. Eastern. The House voted earlier, but because of a procedural problem, they're going to actually have to have another final vote tomorrow. You mentioned that, meanwhile, elsewhere on Capitol Hill today, Andrew McCabe, the deputy director at the FBI, has been testifying behind closed doors to the House Intelligence Committee. In fact, at this late hour, he arrived early afternoon. He is still, we're told, testifying behind closed doors. Why is this important? Well, remember, he first came under scrutiny because McCabe's wife back in 2015 was running for a state race in Virginia, received about $500,000 in contributions, campaign contributions, from a PAC controlled by Terry McAuliffe, the Democratic governor of Virginia, who's, of course, very close to Bill and Hillary Clinton. And then these recent text messages back and forth from Peter Strzok and another FBI official suggesting there was some sort of insurance policy in case Donald Trump was elected, whereby the FBI might investigate him. That has come out, and you remember from those text messages, it was talking about a meeting in Andy's office, believed to be Andrew McCabe's office. This is one of many questions he's being asked about at this hour behind closed doors. And in fact, there are Republicans, as you mentioned, like Trey Gowdy and others, saying if they don't get their questions answered behind closed doors, they may pursue contempt of Congress charges against McCabe and other top FBI and Justice Department officials. Kimberly.
All right, Ed, thank you for that update. And joining us now with more reaction to tonight's upcoming tax reform vote in the Senate is Chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp, RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany, and from the Fox Business Network, Nicole Petalides. Thank you all for being with us on this busy news night. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you. If this legislation actually passes the Senate tonight, then it's going to go back to the House tomorrow. How big of a win is this for President Trump and for Republicans?
You just can't describe it in grand enough terms, Kimberly. This is, first of all, it's generational and historic, but also it just belies this one-year-long prosecution from the liberal press over the course of the last year, which says Donald Trump doesn't know anything about government, he can't get anything done, he's incompetent, his team is bad, blah, blah, blah. And now you look after a year, the economy is humming. He actually gets this tax reform bill through. He stopped all these regulations. It looks like this special counsel investigation is off the rails. And I think, Kimberly, things are smelling a little bit rosy.
Oh, I like this. All right, so that's a rosy forecast we've got there, and you don't even do the weather. Okay, perfect. Right. Kayleigh, so what will this mean, do you think, for everyone's talking already about midterm elections in 2018? If this tax reform gets through, as the president promised the American people, do you think that this is going to work out?
Yes, it's going to work out, and Democrats are going to pay for this at the ballot box in 2018. You know, let's make it known tonight, not a single Democratic congressman or senator voted on the side of the American people. Today marks the day they voted against the American people. They sided with big government. They sided against the American taxpayer. It's a sad day to see that they were aided and abetted by the liberal mainstream media, which has been lying about this all the way along, saying Trump would never get this done. But we are at this point, a historic achievement, because President Trump picked up the phone, lobbied, made this happen, and gave the American people a Christmas gift.
And he did. He promised that. In fact, Nicole said that he was going to try to get this through, before Christmas. So he's been hard at work, working behind the scenes and with a lot of the constituents to get this done. But let's talk about the impact and what this is going to mean in terms of tax reduction and economic growth and feeling better about themselves, families trying to move forward with the middle class if this actually goes through.
Right, 100%. I mean, don't forget what President Donald Trump ran on during his campaign. It was all about the American people, the working class, the middle class, who were really struggling, many of which don't even have $400 for an unexpected emergency. So now this moves forward. January 1st, they wake up, they have a new tax plan, an overhaul that's been 30 years too long. And now what happens on February when that goes into action? These people will now have more money in their pockets. Paul Ryan today actually said, today we give the people of this country their money back. It empowers Americans. They'll have not as many withholdings in their paycheck. They'll be able to do what they need to do with their money. And as far as corporate tax cuts, that is going to be extraordinary. You're going to start to see these companies, they'll be able to expand. They'll be able to raise wages. They'll be able to hire more. And that was the whole idea. Jobs, jobs, jobs for the American people. And the mainstream media somehow is putting a blind eye on the ideas of President Trump's growth plan.
Right.
I mean, it's a growth plan ultimately, and GDP's on the rise, unemployment's better, confidence
Stock
is better.
market up. Yeah,
Stock market record highs. Good point, Kimberly.
Yes, exactly. I watch the Fox Business Network, so I know what's going on. Matt, I want to talk a little bit about the party, too, because, Nicole brings up a good point. We're talking about Paul Ryan. This is something that he has really been steadfast about. It's something that he has really tried to push forward, is tax reform. It's kind of a specialty of his. It's been a dream. And he worked cooperatively and effectively with the President of the United States to do this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was a staffer with Paul in the House of Representatives too long ago, and I remember when he was a younger guy with his dreams of a more free market and a simpler tax code. So I know he deserves a great deal of credit for pushing on this. Really, every day he's been either a staffer or in Congress. And I also think President Trump deserves a great deal of credit because, I've had to make some changes in this bill as it moved forward. I've liked a lot of those changes. To me, what really matters is that we get everyone's effective tax rate down. Sometimes there's gobbledygook in the tax code, and we just want to pay less. But here's the other piece, Kimberly, that's awfully important. This is combined. It's wrong when people say this is Donald Trump's only legislative success. They have passed tons of pieces of legislation to stop Obama's onslaught on the economy through regulations. If you take the easing of regulations combined with this tax bill, you might have an economic growth pattern we've not seen since Reagan.
Yeah, well, this is a great point. And, let's talk, Kayleigh, about how important this was for Republicans to put this promise through and get a win here. Because, there's challenges about other things that they tried to put forward and proffer to Congress, like, repeal and replace Obamacare. Some struggles along the way there with obstructionists trying to get in the way of forward progress. But here it seems like this was well thought out. They have been able to get votes that they didn't necessarily think they might be able to get, people to get, come on board.
That's right. This was a very different story than Obamacare repeal and replace because Republicans knew we had to make this happen. When you sit back and you say, what binds us together as Republicans, one of the bedrock principles is the idea that when you take a bet on the American people, when you give them more of their money, leave them to their own accord, they will prosper, they will grow this economy, they will harness the American dream. It's not just what Republicans should stand for, it's what Democrats should stand for, too. The JFK Democrats did stand for that. JFK said tax cuts mean higher American income. No longer are Democrats the party of JFK. They're the party of obstructionism. They're the party that wants to take down this president, and they at the expense of the American people and having more money in their pockets.
Some of the people, though, Nicole, I'm disturbed when I hear by some of my esteemed colleagues. Juan Williams was bringing up today, oh, this is ridiculous. This is only benefiting, the rich. This is amounting to maybe $2,500. I think $2,500 is a lot of money if some people are going to be able to get that kind of relief and put money back in their pockets.
It's an enormous amount of money, and it's money that they have never seen before, obviously in decades. And it's going to be a move for the economy. It's going to make the life a little bit easier for the working man and woman here in America. As far as the tax cuts for the rich, it really isn't for the rich. On the contrary, we already heard, Ed Henry just mentioned New Jersey, California, New York. They're not going to feel so many great tax cuts on this one. So I think it really is spread out. And the latest number, I think, is 84% of Americans will benefit in some way, shape, or form with this tax plan. So ultimately, it's going to boost the economy and make people feel better and empower them to move forward. And it's really amazing. No Democrats on board. This is an American bill.
It's unbelievable.
American bill. This is not a Republican bill.
And you think they would be on board, Matt, to help the middle class and get some of these tax cuts, in place. It's a very good, auspicious start. There's a lot of good things about the bill. I'm sure there's more that can come forward, but it's a very good foundation from which to start. But then there's those that say, well, look, the poll numbers don't show necessarily that some of the American public is having a groundswell behind it. Some of that's going to be messaging, but maybe it's going to come in when they've got the dollars, the Benjamins in the hands and the dollars in the pockets.
Right. That's right. Kimberly, here's the thing about presidential contests. Presidents tend to get reelected when the economy is growing and the American people feel positive about their economic prospects. So I don't care what the polls say about this bill. I think what matters is over time, over the course of the next year or two, do the American people feel like they have greater prospects? That's poor people. That's middle class people. That's people who are succeeding in the economy. If people feel better about their prospects, they're going to be comfortable with the idea that the president's doing a good job. And by the way, Republicans in Congress as well. So if we get the policy right, like we do in this bill, I think it's going to make for good politics.
And for their 401ks and IRAs, I turn it to the stock market always. That's if anybody has a job and they put even a little bit away, they're already seeing the benefits. We've had an unbelievable year, and now we're approaching Dow 25,000. On the night of the election, stocks were sinking. It was the abyss. It's the end all. And look what happened, right? We were in the 17,000 range, 18,000, all the way now up to almost 25,000. So it's amazing what's been happening, and it's beneficial for those who have 401ks and IRAs as well.
Yeah, Kayleigh, so in terms of going forward, how can we translate this if people are looking at it? What do Republicans need to do to be able to get this messaging out there for the midterm elections to show this as a win and a win for all Americans and not just privileged class?
Yes, well, every Republican should be out there saying, the American people, look at your paycheck in February. It will be higher. You will see a tangible increase, and the American people will feel it. It's not something we need to tell them because they'll feel it. And you know what? Sean so often on this show talks about the forgotten man and woman, and he talked about Donald Trump being the president of the forgotten man and woman. This is that in action. This is Donald Trump standing up and passing tax cuts that are uniquely Donald Trump, that take away the ability for congressmen to deduct their living expenses and local lobbyists to deduct their expenses and corporations to deduct their lavish dinners. These are uniquely conservative populist tax cuts, and this is Donald Trump remembering the forgotten man and woman.
Well, absolutely. And, Matt, what do you think in terms of now, I want to go back a little bit, because in order for things to get done, the president's got to be able to get the support of all Republicans, not just, the populist movement, but the rank and file,
right.
Basically the establishment. How do you make this move into a win for the president in terms of that relationship coalescing?
Well, I've spent too much time living in the swamp, Kimberly. Let me tell you something I know about them. They like a winner.
Swampy.
And the fact is, as we close out this year, Donald Trump is a political winner. Yes, people can knock him in the liberal media. They can knock him in the polls. But you can't argue with the strength of the economy. You can't argue with the fact that he has been keeping his campaign promises one after another. He keeps them. With that speech he made the other day on securing our national security combined with a strong economy.
Yes.
They like a winner, Kimberly, and this is a great way to end the year.
Yeah, that was very, Reagan-esque in terms of the themes and what he was hitting, and just really strong Republican messaging there. So, he needs for limited government and getting rid of the regulations, and now he's going to give some tax relief if he can get this through. And as you see, we're awaiting the Senate vote on the tax reform bill, already passed the House, and we'll see what happens tonight. So keep it right here. I want to thank you so much, Matt and Kayleigh and Nicole, for being with me.